I am Dr. Dan Arnold. I am Director of Support and Innovation in ELIS. I am the Provost Fellow for Artificial Intelligence for this academic year as well, which means I've been a pretty busy boy and I've been doing a lot of learning, and I'm going to share a little bit of that learning with you. So sit back, relax, and pour a coffee, step away if you need to. We're just going to kind of get started with if you're brand new to generative AI, um, what it is, what it isn't, and how we can get started. So, hence, a practical guide for exploring AI tools and applications. So, we're going to demystify if you're new to Gen AI, we're going to clear up some of those myths that are flying around out there. We're going to get a better understanding of how AI actually works and what it is good at, what it is not necessarily all that good at. And we can explore some applications, and I'd be interested to hear other applications that you're considering of some real world use cases in education. Show of hands, who here is in education? All right, excellent. Thank you. So we're going to look at the different ways that we already know and interact with AI because there's a lot of it that's going around out there. And oftentimes the branch of artificial intelligence of generative AI gets used as a blanket term for all of AI. So there are many different types of AI, things that you've already interacted with. Hopefully that make you a little bit more comfortable as you start exploring AI and how those different types of AI blend together into what we see now as generative. Um, Point two, we're going to distinguish generative AI from the different types, whether that's machine learning, robotics, and we're going to identify some ways that you could potentially use this in your own teaching and lead and research, and explore some of the ways that AI learns patterns and creates content. For me, I've been using ChatGPT for over 2 years now. I've also been using Gemini for a better part of this year, and it's just interesting how they learn more about you and how you work and what you like as you go along. So the generative AI is using concepts of AI to learn more about you to tailor responses and back to you. So let's think about just some of the more recent tech interactions that we've had. Think about something like GPS navigation. That's something that I use, fairly often. Google Maps has been a good friend as it's added more features. We've seen fewer atlases out there in people's cars for road trips. We see fewer MapQuest printed directions appearing in cars. That's all part of that natural evolution of the technology. As the new features come in, it kind of takes place of some of those things that we had once put so much faith into. I loved atlases as a kid. I still do. I like looking at maps. I like memorizing the road. Maybe I worry, so I like to know where I'm going and I like to memorize the roads. But I don't do that as much now, considering we've got the use of like Google Maps and stuff like that. Nick says ROADs. Yes, the ROADs, Nick. Think about streaming recommendations through Netflix or any of your music providers. The different things you can see. It's got the thumb. You can do a thumbs up. Email filters, one of my favorite. Take all that junk before it even gets to my inbox. Mark it as read. Delete it. Put it into this folder. Don't mark it as read. Put it into my reading folder of things that I need to do. These are all ways that we've automated our email inbox to make sure that we're getting the things that we want most up at the forefront, and the rest of it can fall to the wayside. And voice assistants. I always have to be careful when I say this because if I say the name of the Apple one, all my devices will start to light up. It's waiting for that word, to wake up. I don't think Alexa is down here, so I could say Alexa. If I say it too loudly, I might activate yours if you've got one closely. But they're ingrained in our embedded in our phones. We've got devices around our homes. We can say that keyword, and if I did it right now, my watch, my phone, and my computer would be like, "What can we do? How can we help you?" AI or some form of AI was most likely the culprit behind each one of those interactions. So Netflix, I like to use this one because most people have interacted with Netflix or something to that effect. When you watch something, it starts to say, hey, maybe you would like this. Let me recommend some of this to you. It's almost like when you go to a restaurant and the waiter's just like, oh, it could pair well nicely with this. A big old bottle of wine or something would go with that. It's a similar concept in that it's recommending things to you based on maybe what people have ordered before, what they like, your viewing preferences. We notice in a lot of things like Netflix and Spotify, any of our streaming services, it will ask us, do we like this? And that's altering the algorithm of things that appear for you. It's just changing the formula a little bit, trying to improve it. It's like machine learning. It's trying to learn more about you so it can make more targeted recommendations. And they're like, hey, groups of people who have watched this particular show and this particular show, they tend to like these shows as well. So it's interesting that Netflix, uh, Apple TV, Spotify, any of those use a similar function from social media in that, hey, I like this. Okay, we'll put more content like that over towards you as well. So that's all AI. That's machine learning. It's learning about you. And things like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, they do a similar thing. They're trying to learn more about you, the way you like your responses, the tone of the response that you like. It's very social media-esque and streaming right-esque in that it's learning. It's learning about you and trying to make those recommendations and get you tailored content uh, toward your preferences. Why do they do that? Because they want you to keep using their service, right? Like, hey, you like this show, here's more of this show. Keep coming back. We'll give you more of that stuff. Google Maps. I love me Google Maps. If I'm stuck in traffic for anything more than 2 minutes, I've already got Google Maps pulled up to see how far along is this red section of the map, and do I have some alternatives to work around that? That works in real time. It's incredible. It works in real time in that it can reroute you. You can avoid tolls. You can avoid accidents. There are so many different things that you can do. Waze is another one that even includes the ability to add where the police are. So if you're driving a little too fast, you know when to slow down a little bit. Xander gives a thumbs up. Yeah, he's a big Waze user. But it is amazing that it can suggest these optimal routes in real time based on traffic, based on any of the conditions or road closure, construction. It is so helpful in trying to reroute around things, especially traveling in unfamiliar areas. If I'm in a different state or something's going on, it's so easy to pull up Google Maps and just find new ways to work all around. So again, that's a bit of automation, that is some machine learning, that is such a helpful tool that I can't imagine traveling without Google Maps yeah, at my side. And then autocorrect or autocomplete. You remember when our emails or text messages, they didn't used to finish themselves? We had to do all the words, and then all of a sudden we started seeing those words appear at the end. It's like, in your Google search as well. I remember for a while, a fun thing was all the different things Google would autocomplete your uh, request with. It would just, have a list of funny things that would pop up. That's very much how a large language model like ChatGPT or Gemini works, in that these are not tools that have emotions. They don't feel. They can certainly invoke feelings from you and make you feel a certain way, but they themselves have no feelings or ability to emote. What they are doing is guessing what that next word is. In this new era of generative AI, has gotten so good at being able to process so much information in real time. It's like taking, the entirety of all of Netflix and in real time, like how Google Maps does, predicting exactly what that next word is going to be. It's an incredible amount of power that is behind that, but it's looking at patterns. It's guessing on what it thinks you want to say next and makes it a little more personalized to the way that you actually write. So I'm willing to bet that, if Nick and I are typing the same thing in our Google search box, it's going to autocomplete to something different because it knows more about us because we're logged into our Google Chrome profile and it understands more about us that way. So I do think it's an interesting way to think about how a large language model works is think about how it auto completes or you know, completes a sentence when you're texting or when you're emailing. Large language models are doing that off of a very specific uh, prompt that you've given it. So now that I've been talking for about 10 minutes straight, before we jump along, are there any clarifying questions, anything that I can slow the bus down here for a minute? Because I'll talk all hour. I promise you that. Maria?
I don't know if you're going to be showing us things, but maybe I was working on like a chat bot and it was learning from my, prompts and then it started getting off track and I was like then I switched the setting so that it would just reset and not be learning. And I not and the setting and in the prompt. Is
Mhm.
there anything that you want to say about that? Because it got like worse as it went on, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the quality of the input is going to dictate the quality of the output. It's hard to say without seeing exactly, what you're doing. I turn off the training on ChatGPT, so I'm not using, they can't use my information to train their model. Um, but I've left the personalization intact because it does a good job of remembering things that I've been working on and pulling that additional context in when I didn't really ask it to. Like I'm working on a pretty big proposal right now, and it's aside from the prompt that I gave it, it's pulling in information and context from other projects and things that I've done in the past. It's like, well, since you've been working on this, here's some more, information on that. That's going a little deeper than I think what we're going to be doing today, but I do think it's interesting to note that how I use the personalization, how I let it continue to learn more about me, I think it's become more effective for me over time. And it dictates if I use ChatGPT or Gemini for certain things. So I'm developing that, if you will, kind of working relationship. That's not one with emotion. That's just one like, hey, we're working together. I'm doing more development with that in Gemini this year than ever before. But with ChatGPT, I'm still passing some things off to my friend Chat. Any other questions or any other concepts or things I can clarify before we take our next step forward? Being that it says no, we'll continue on. I love how ChatGPT or how AI is still absolutely horrible at spelling things. If you look at this side of the slide, you can see there's just stuff all over the place. So at one point, this all seemed very futuristic, creating images on demand. Now we've got things like Sora creating videos, on demand, very realistic-ish looking type videos. But it's already here. AI is here. It has been here. And though we haven't had a huge coordinated response to that as of yet, that doesn't dismiss the fact that it is here and really is shaping many decisions that are happening across various industries every day, along with daily activities. So hopefully we can, bridge some of this awareness along with some practical understanding to help you guys get started and moving forward too. So what is generative AI? Does anybody want to take a poke at this one?
I can take a poke.
By all means.
Uh, it can make you something new based on what you tell it to make.
Can certainly do that.
It can give you ideas when you're stuck.
Yeah, you can certainly do that. Yeah, to that point, Cheryl, I use that a lot for at times ideation, or one of the things that makes me anxious or drives me is just putting the first words down, and then I have to craft it to make it sound you know coherent, cohesive, intelligent enough for academia. Uh, we like our big words sometimes and fancy sayings, and that's that's not a knock. That is a reality of it as well, because you're right. You can take something and create new ideas off of it. I can take the notes and such that I've jotted down and ask it to just write a summary of these notes to help me get started, or give me a rough outline for this. What we don't do is just say, hey, generate this entire report off of this 3 sentence thing. That's not enough context, not enough content, or information. So as a starting point for brainstorming and ideation, I certainly, love doing it for that. But it also helps me get over that anxiety of just getting the first words out on the paper too. And then I can wordsmith it from there. You have a question?
Yeah, just in terms of cybersecurity, like in the future, I mean, even though we're saying don't collect data about me, but like I guess I think about like them following our IP address anyway, or just Comcast and having that information, once you get data out
Yeah.
there. And
So we're going to talk more about cybersecurity later, and then I have a whole session on cybersecurity. I just want to kind of keep this as a more of an intro to generative AI, getting started. That's the stuff that kind of gets kind of scary, right? But we also give all of our information to Google through Google Chrome when we're signed into profiles there. I mean, they track that information. They've got that information already. It's just being mindful if it's personally identifiable information or confidential, things that don't need to be out there in public, then, I'm less hesitant to put that out there. It's, many of these questions I don't think were asked when we're doing Google profiles and sign into Chrome and things of that nature. So it's just, I think, a natural evolution to be cautious and curious in the same kind of way when we're using generative AI.
yes, Dan, sorry I went into that topic, but the one thing that really concerns me as an educator is putting in quiz questions, you know, generating them, and how likely is it that they're just gonna, from me, leak out there?
Wow. I mean, I can take a picture of my screen and get the questions out, that way too. It's if you don't want your intellectual property in there, nobody's going to make you. If you want to build quiz questions out of there, you can certainly do that, but nobody's going to make you use these tools. And today is really meant to be just getting started with understanding kind of what it is and what it isn't. Maybe we can do more of those questions toward the end because I don't want to waylay the entire session towards data privacy concerns. That's getting a little bit deeper into what I want to do today. And we have a whole session on it next week as well, hoping to have cybersecurity folks there to help with more of those questions. But I'll get into the next one here. Kind of speaking along the lines of what Nick was saying, it can create new things. Traditional AI relies on your existing data, recognizes patterns, and can make predictions, whereas the generative AI is very good at creating new content. It can create somewhat original outputs. There's certainly concern over copyright, and we can talk about that later. What I've always found fascinating about these large language models is how it can synthesize such huge amounts of information. Um, very quickly. It takes so much information and just really processes through that. So we think of maybe some of the traditional AIs. One I like to use is the Roomba vacuum. It has an idea of your room. It does your room. It cleans its thing. It goes back in a box and it charges. And then it's done. It's not learning new information. It's done. It's done its job. It's automated. It knows its pattern. It makes predictions based off of running into things and running around them as well. Whereas generative AI is going to map whole new things out for you. So a simple analogy with our generative AI created student here on the left is that it can be like a very creative student who has read all the books, who learns patterns and styles. I like to do that too. And it can produce something new based on that knowledge, but they can still get things wrong. And they need the human and the expert to verify and confirm that accuracy. And this is where it gets really interesting in academia because, we help develop expertise. We don't just claim expertise. We help develop expertise in our students so that we can help them understand if the content coming from a generative AI is good information or if it's bad information. It's, that human in the loop that still confirms, all right, you're on the right path, but there's more detail here. There's more information. You've missed some of the foundational knowledge. And if we didn't believe that that was true or that was important, freshmen would be starting off in 300 or 400 or 3,000, 4,000 level courses. Those 1,000 level courses serve the purpose of giving you the foundational vocabulary, giving you the foundational concepts so that you can begin to build more expertise. And one of the critiques with large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini, and I agree with that, is that it can make it very easy to bypass that foundational knowledge. It can make it very easy for someone to get incorrect or incomplete information and mistake that for expertise, mistake that for in-depth knowledge. So for our faculty, I like to say that this is not a replacement for what you do. This does not do that. It actually begs for your expertise even more to help students understand what is quality output, what is, good information, and what is bad information. So just remember that though these are powerful tools, they lack emotion, they still get things wrong, and the need for humans and educators to verify outputs is still critically important. So we think of examples, text generation like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. OU has a version of Gemini now. It's a free version that's available in your Google apps. Again, I use these for writing assistance, summaries, drafts, ideation, really good at things like that. Many of them, ChatGPT, Gemini included, also do image generation right in right in there. DALL-E is another big image generator that's been around for a bit. That's what ChatGPT uses. They use DALL-E to generate the images, and Midjourney. So you can basically type something in and it will create an image on that. You can edit that image and do that. And while it's a lot of fun, it does take a lot of power to do that for those with environmental concerns. Editing images that way might not be as environmentally efficient as using something like Photoshop, for an example. So though it's awesome and it's great and so much fun, we also have to be mindful of energy consumption and environmental impact of just kind of playing for the sake of playing. And there are some cool media applications out there too that can do code generation, videos, music composition. The music ones are kind of fun too because it can create lyrics and songs, all of those fun things. And we've had some fun with that with the kids, just making like dinner time songs or go to bed songs, learning about that. But there are some cool things out there that will allow you to create text, images, and media, including videos, along the way. So let's talk about, before I go to that, I should ask, are there any other questions or anything I can clarify about some of these different tools, the big ones like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude? Any burning questions out there? Throw them out there. We'll see what sticks. Hearing none, I will continue. And if we wrap a few minutes early because there's no discussion or questions, that's totally fine too. You take this core concepts and use cases. So some of the key terms we've heard about: large language models. That's the brain. That's trained algorithms. It processes, it generates content. We get a little bit deeper. It's like neural networks in your brain, the different synapses in your brain fire. There's all these different wavelengths of your brain. It's so cool. I'm not a neuroscientist. I just, try to understand it, through that lens. But that model is their brain that is trained off of that training data, whether it's text, images, patterns, huge amounts of data. Again, since so much of the World Wide Web is out there, you'll hear concerns about copyright and ownership. And those, since AI is still a highly unregulated area, highly unregulated field, I'm not going to comment on what's happening with copyright, but I can fully understand why many would be concerned that their copyright material, their intellectual property, is being scraped and scanned to help generate new content, and now I'm saying, hey, this is new content I generated. So there's certainly some ethical concerns with using these tools and understanding that and the implication for creative folks and people who have intellectual property that just to be mindful of that. So we've got the model, that's the brain. What's it been trained off of? What's the information that's in the brain? Now the prompt, that's your instruction. That's the input that guides what the AI creates. And that's where it starts to get really fun, really interesting. So if we look at some everyday use cases that are out there, again, for faculty, brainstorm some lecture topics. What are some ideas? Or I've got this foundational article or journal entry. If this was something that was, publicly available, I know many of them are. You could go into something like ChatGPT and help me brainstorm lecture topics, help me come up with an outline for a lecture. What are some examples of interactive forum discussion assignments that could come up from this particular article? And why do those matter? I like to do that. It's like, why? Tell me why you think this is important. And if I ask ChatGPT to do something for me, provide your rationale, provide some sources. It's absolutely okay to ask for that type of information in any kind of prompt that you do, just to help give you sourced material, to help you find the things that you need sooner. Think of it, it's very much a souped up library search in many ways. And though it does not replace librarians, it's certainly an interesting way to go about it. You can use it to potentially create quizzes or draft assignment prompts, generate examples, case studies. Uh, Really, I mean, we're limited by our own creativity sometimes in this. So, and help us all learn. Yes. I have for staff here summarized documents. Yes. Tell me what this is all about. Google Notebook LM, which is a tool we'll get to later, that's really good at summarizing documents. Draft communications, create templates. I do this for creating templates for like business cases and such, or just to organize, my information for me. Remember, these are large language models are really good at taking a ton of information, processing that, and then and spitting the information back out. For summarizing documents, it's not looking to create new content necessarily. It's just looking to explain it in a different way. One example is if I have something that's just full of a lot of jargon, I don't understand what this means. I did this back in the spring with a report from one of my doctors, and it's just said, "All right, I have no idea what this means. What does this mean?" And that was how I found out I had 2 tears in my meniscus and that I probably had surgery coming up. So, though I talked to my doctor and didn't, made sure I verified those results, it was an interesting way to take something that was complex, lots of medical jargon. I said, explain this to me like I'm, 15 years old or a non-medical professional to help me understand that. I see, a lot of power in that for students who, might get something that is above their, current reading level or understanding level as a way to break that down into a way that's just easier to understand. We get at times some pretty heavy reading in academia, or if it's maybe something that was written 100 years ago, the written word was a little different 100 years ago, or even like foundational scholars out of like in the 1800s, like that's tough to read. You have to, it is because culturally, conceptually, it's a very different language. A way to break that down and understand it faster and easier. I like doing it for that kind of stuff as well. Now, for students, of course, we know that they can just have it do the assignment for them. That's not going to facilitate learning. Potentially offer opportunities to use AI to help outline papers. If you're using it to brainstorm and outline, show them how you're using it to brainstorm and outline, create study guides, or just practice through some of those concepts. Pretty, powerful stuff that you could even provide them study guides, provide them information to help, follow up with them if we're worried more so about, our stuff going uh, into these LLMs without our permission. And that's a hard one because people are going to do what people do. They're just, we often look out for self-interest and they won't always ask permission to put things online or into a large language model. And though it's not my favorite, that's just a reality that we won't control people, but we can try and control the conditions under which they are learning. and try to lead by example. The ways that you're using it, show them. They might have another idea or another suggestion. I can't tell you how much I've learned from other people just by playing around with these tools in a live setting. So for me, I like using generative AI. It does save me time on some routine tasks, especially like generating outlines for reports or things that I have coming up. It allows me to focus on more of the higher level work. I got a 210-page report that was sent to me over the weekend that I am going to use something like Notebook LM to just help me do a deep dive into that content before I start, going into it more thoroughly. I like doing that because it's just like when I looked for academic papers when I did my dissertation, I would read the abstract. That was just a summary of everything that was in there, right? Well, if I can get that level of something from a report or a reading or something that's passed along to me, now I can make a decision as to whether I want to continue going down and reading this article, uh, if it makes sense for what I'm trying to do. So it's almost a fun way to just take a report and give me an abstract of something as well. What I'll say for uploading documents is that OU's version of Gemini has the same level of protection as our OU email, our Google Drive. I'm more likely to put something work related or report related into our version of Gemini because our data stays secure. I'm less likely to do that with ChatGPT because though it's a university paid license, it's still not under an agreement like Google, like we have for all of our Gmail and such. So we don't have the same level of data protection that we do with ChatGPT or with Claude or Perplexity or any of the other models. OU's version of Gemini is what I recommend for anything that's directly work related because we can log, we can look back at anything that's gone in there, and we have data insurance and protections and liabilities in place with Google that we don't have with any of the other providers. I also like to use large language models to push new ideas, look for different approaches, get through some of those initial creative blocks. And for me, and especially for students, for faculty learning some of these basic skills, that's what's going to help you pass these skills along to the next generation of folks who leave us and enter the workforce as well. It really prepares them for just the evolving, tech landscape and the modernization of the workplace. Hands-on demos. Oh, I said I was going to do that, didn't I? So let's do something over in Gemini. Let me open up Gemini over here on my screen. And then I will switch screens. Right. So pardon me while I switch screens. Okay, now we should be seeing Gemini on our screens. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in a prompt that just says write about customer service. It's thinking here. You hear it even says open university chats aren't used to improve our models. Gemini can make mistakes. So very simple prompt. Write about customer service, strategic function, all the things that we do before, during, and after. Xander probably knows a few things about customer service and supporting others. He knows a few things. So does our ID team. But here we go. We're defining customer service, meeting the needs and desires, problem solving, building relationships. Why is excellent, not just okay? Why is excellent customer service critical? Now it's giving us increased loyalty, retention, boosted revenue. Awesome. Brand reputation is enhanced, reduced customer churn, gathers valuable feedback. And then it's telling us the key components: knowledgeable staff, empathy, active listening, quick and efficient responses, personalization, convenience, self-service, proactivity. It gives us this, and it even follows it up with, would you like to explore scientific or specific examples of good versus bad customer service? Or perhaps delve, that's a famous AI word, delve into it's giving us some kind of follow-up, which I think is kind of interesting. I want to soup this prompt up a little bit. With prompting, I think of it very much like story problems in math, in that the more clarity, the more variables, the more information and context that we can give a prompt, I think the better it's going to be for output. So it really is a quality in, quality out. I'm going to say, instead of just write about customer service, write 3 tips for handling difficult customer service calls using a friendly tone. So we're telling it we want 3 tips. We don't want all the tips and everything. We want 3 tips for difficult customer service calls, not just for customer service in general, but for difficult customer service using a friendly tone. And then include an example for each tip. Survey says, master the art of emotional de-escalator. I could have used this earlier in my manager support days. When a customer is upset, they're often not mad at you personally, but the problem or the situation. The fastest way to diffuse anger is by showing genuine empathy and validation before jumping to a solution. So, tips: start your response with a clear apology, acknowledgement of frustration, instead of, I could fix that for you, but you need to calm down. That always works. Try, I am so sorry you had to deal with this headache. That sounds incredibly frustrating. I understand why you're upset, and I'm here to make this right. Any comments on just this first output with a little bit more detailed prompt? Anything we see interesting?
I think it's a fantastic example, especially the "you need to calm down" kind of verbiage that's so classic, and no one's ever calmed down by being told to calm down.
Yeah, people don't usually agree. You're right. I do need to calm down. I'm already heightened. All right, what's our next one? Active listening. Repeat and rephrase the issue. So, something difficult because they feel like they haven't been understood by previous reps. I have used this one before. Certainly, did I hear this accurately? Is this what you're asking? After the customer finishes explaining their issue, summarize it in your own words. It shows you were actively listening and gives them a chance to correct any misunderstandings. Instead of, what exactly do you want me to do now? Try, just to make sure I have this exactly right. You were billed for 2 months of service, but you only received a product in the first month. Is that correct? If so, I see the error and can process that credit immediately. Wow, that is much more effective of, what exactly do you want me to do now? Kind of fun. Let's see here. Here's our third one. Focus on the solution, not on the blame. So use clear, direct action statements to outline the next steps you'll take, shifting the tone from problem to resolution. So instead of, well, the system glitched and I have to fill out a separate form, which takes 48 hours. Say, I know you need this resolved now. Here's what I'm doing. Submit in a priority ticket right now to get it fixed. You'll receive a confirmation with your new balance within the hour. So interesting. It likes to follow up to help keep you engaged. It wants you to stick around a little bit more. So oftentimes it will ask you some kind of follow-up question. Would you like some tips on how to manage your own stress and maintain a friendly tone during these challenging calls? That's an interesting one. You can just simply say, yeah, sure. That's a great request. Remember, large language models like Gemini, ChatGPT, they can't wait to pat you on the back to tell you how great and amazing you are. Puff your chest up a little bit. That's more of the hype. That's I know we all need a little bit of validation, but every time we type something in, they're just like, you're simply the best. Uh, I
I
just like
wish
to point that out.
I wish you could change it so it could be more snarky.
Yeah. So you can actually. So remember, we wanted the tone to maintain a friendly tone during these challenging calls. They can you give me 3 funny examples of snarky customer service responses?
But I was thinking more like how I said, "Hey, that's a fun request. I want that to be snarky."
Okay. I don't want to train this one to be snarky to me. We work
Right,
together sometimes.
right.
But it's certainly something that you can do, right? You can change the tone of the response. You can change the way it's interacting with you. You want it to be snarky? Do you want it to be hypercritical? Do you want it to be supportive? You could do that. So tech support for a device that won't turn on. I've tried everything. Is there anything else you can suggest before I throw this thing out the window? Check to see if it was plugged in, asking for a friend who also passed kindergarten. Ooh, they are getting a little snippety in here, aren't they? So let me step away from that particular screen and let me go to back over here. So we had a couple of examples there. You'll notice the quality of the response that we got was richer just by adding a few things in here. We want 3 tips. We don't want all the tips. Difficult customer service, friendly tone. Tell it those things. Include an example for each tip. That's more information for a large language model like Gemini or ChatGPT to help give you a better output the first time that you go through, rather than just prompting after prompt after prompt. That's okay if that's how it is while you're learning. But just understand that there is a little bit of an art to crafting an effective prompt. And if you're curious, we'll learn more about prompting at the end of the week. We're doing another session on Friday. I can show you some of the tips that I like to do for my own prompts. Any other questions or comments on that particular live demo? No. All right. I'm going to move this over here and we'll continue. Hold on. So with your prompts, be specific about the tone. If you want it to be professional, if you want it to be friendly, if you want it to be warm, or in Nick's case, if you want it to be snarky, you can absolutely ask it to do that. Tell it the format that you want. Do you want it in a numbered list, a bulleted list? Do you want just a 1 paragraph summary? Tell it, 300 words or less, or, 500 words or less, or just 3 examples. That's going to help you get the information, faster or at least more concise based on what you're asking. Give it a job. I created one. I had to do a submission for the Forward Together newsletter through the provost office, and they gave me an idea on the things that they wanted to learn more about. So I just created a quick little custom chatbot to interview me, and here are the themes, here are the things that we want to talk about. And it gave me a summary. So I said, you're an expert interviewer. You're interviewing me for this. Here's the kind of tone that I want. Here's an example of one of the newsletters, just so you understand, the tone of how it's written. And it was like, yeah, great. So it interviewed me. I talked with my computer. It talked back to me and it processed an excellent first draft. And, Patty and I went back with about 5 or 6 different times editing it and revising it, but it turned that process, it was a very quick process and a quick turnaround. Provide context and audience. I'll often do this that, I'm developing, a presentation for university faculty and administrators. So it already knows who its audience is. It's meant to be professional and supportive in tone. So I'm giving it more context. Or if it's something I'm doing for a class, this is for a 4,000 level undergraduate course, or this is for a graduate level course. That's going to help it rather than say, find content for a 5th grade audience. It's going to filter all of that stuff out, information out to provide stuff, and that's more contextually relevant for you. And provide examples. Here's what I want the output to look like. Here's the tone that I want it written in. If you have something and you want it done in a certain way, tell it, this is how I want it done. Here's an example of how we do that. And always, always review all of your output. Anything that I put out there that I've used generative AI, I have read through, I have reviewed, I have revised, I have had other people edit and look at that. That's pretty normal in academia. If we're going to send things out for publication, we write, we review, we may have some of our peers review it before we send it out to a journal where their board will review and edit and such. It's the same type of iterative process. Maybe not to the extent of getting published in the journal, but the spirit behind that remains, in that we don't just trust this information blindly, just like you don't trust everything a person says to you on face value. We question and we push that conversation and we verify that those outputs are accurate and are representative of what we want to say. Because though it can give us the words, we still give it the power, we still give it the voice. And if you are going to put the information out there, you better believe it. You better know it as well. Because when you don't, and it becomes very obvious, that's not very good. It's not a good feeling, right? So if you're going to put the information out there, just say, yeah, I used generative AI to help me draft this, and we went review and edit it, and here's the final product. They call that the human in the loop. And I like keeping a human in the loop because to me, that tells us why we need expertise just as much as we ever have, and that these things can't replace expertise. And as I mentioned earlier, avoid putting that sensitive or confidential information in. If you don't want it out there publicly, whatever it is, your own intellectual property or personal information, just simply don't add it to the models. And remember, we can always say no. You don't have to use it. If you do use it and you aren't happy with the output and you feel like the prompting has been effective, nobody's going to make you use it. You always have that choice. Uh, but I would say that it's best to learn about it, at least on a surface level, how it's used, how it could be used, so that you can be better prepared in helping your students navigate this within your discipline as well. So for today, we got an understanding of what generative AI is, how it works. The next session that I'm going to be doing Friday at 9 a.m., just some prompt engineering basics. That's usually a fun one. I like doing that because we get into some fun activities. But just really building confidence. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say we're going too slow or we're not going fast enough. We're going to get left behind. And it's if we worry about catching up to everybody else, we're not going to be able to focus on the important things. So I like to stress that wherever you're at on this learning journey, that's okay. You know, we don't chastise people because of where they're at in learning a particular thing. But this is so much different in that it touches on every discipline, every subject, every office, everything around campus. That it's okay that if you don't know a heck of a lot about this, get started, play around a little bit. Before we were adults, we were kids and we played. And one day that four-letter word became the four-letter word work. And now we work, more than we play. But I would encourage you find some kind of personal use for this, and that whether it's gardening or rediscovering a new hobby. And my teaching AI literacy to seniors, I had a gentleman who created a new practice routine for his trumpet. And he's like, I haven't played my trumpet this much in 30 years. He was pumped. He's like, it was worth every minute of this experience. He's just like, he's at home playing his trumpet again. Guy's like 82 years old. Like, that's exciting. But find ways to use this in your personal life for those kinds of confidence building skills. And when you start doing that, I promise you, you'll start to find ways to incorporate it into your work. And I think the narrative around generative AI we often hear is how much more work you can do, or how much more time it will save you from work so that you can do more work. And you can do work with this, right? You can do so much work with this. You'll be so productive at work. Yeah, but that's not what life is all about. Find ways to incorporate this into your personal life. We've used it for trip planning, itinerary building. Our senior classes, I've taught them how to build their own chatbots. We're having a blast. But for a trip planner, we help someone plan a trip to Maui, and we've got people with mobility issues or dietary sensitivities and restrictions. It's all right. Plan us a 5-day trip to this place, 2 meals. Somebody has a gluten intolerance. We've got a person with mobility issues. Help us chart a path, find restaurants, find attractions, find places to stay that will accommodate this group. And they're and be like, yeah, sure, great. And there's a whole list and itinerary of things to do. I saw a couple of things here on chat. Chad says he used it to learn 60 to 70 songs for an upcoming gig. I know that feeling. I've been there before. And what is my recommendation regarding paying to upgrade ChatGPT? For me, a year and a half or so ago, I made the move to the paid version of ChatGPT because at that time it did not allow me to upload files or create chatbots. I believe the free version does give you some limited access to those items now. What I will say is that you'll get higher limits and on the amount of prompting that you can do. I would say start with the free version for now. If you start bumping into those limits, then it might be reason to go up to the paid version. But if we're just getting started now, go with that. I'm more interested in looking in working with UTS to see what we can do to get access to more advanced models here at the university, because we have programs that are artificial intelligence programs. We've got research projects that require access to more advanced models, and we have organizational needs that are going to require access to things like possibly Gemini Pro or the full, suite of Copilot. They're also very expensive, and we have to find a practical way to do this. Uh, but me, I mean, I personally use Gemini Pro in my personal Gmail account. I have access to ChatGPT Plus, and you'll see the quality of the answers starts to get better. But if we're just learning, that the free version is enough to get started. So I think that, we can continue asking questions, or if you want to share any experiences you've had with, AI tools. Really, today was to get a more practical understanding so you can start building that comfort. Share with your colleagues. We'll be doing these sessions again later next month with through UHR. I imagine will pop up some in the winter as well. But as soon as we start getting more comfortable with these tools and having an understanding of what they are and aren't, what they can or can't do, and what they might be good or bad at, depending on what you're teaching or what you're doing, I think that we need to take this year to do more of that to really start pushing things forward. So it's already here, guys. We know that it's already, part of daily life. It has been for quite some time. If we think about those recommendation systems or Google Maps. Uh, and as Nick said, I'll reiterate, it takes new content, it creates new content from things it's learning patterns. And really, this is, just the beginning for many of you. And I encourage you to play. Start by using those free tools. If you start running into limits, consider exploring some more of the advanced tools. Just remember that for anything that you're doing OU wise, I try to stick with OU's version of Gemini because it's got the protections on your data and your information. It's not being used to train Gemini in any way. As soon as you go to another system, even if OU is paying for it, it doesn't have that level of protection like you do through Gemini. So that's the last of my slides. If we'd like to take a few more minutes to ask any questions or anything of that nature, I'd be happy to do so.